Okay, so I wanted to do this call because I feel like sometimes, or at least me, I found myself kind of getting into a rut. So last spring or so, I was kind of doing sneak peeks, and I was doing them in a Facebook group, like kind of how we've always done it. And I just kind of was not getting any interaction from people. I was just feeling like they were kind of dead, and I was noticing that hardly anybody was even watching anything that I was putting in the groups. And so I was like, man, I've got to do something to change this up. So I was in a group that my upline had done, and it was a call that Melanie Mitro had done, and she was talking about how she was running these sneak peeks on her Instagram. And I was like, oh, there's no way that that's what she's doing. And so I kind of dug in a little bit more and started doing them probably around May, I would say. And I'm always that type of person who, like, I want to kind of figure it out for myself and figure out what's working and then share with you guys what's working. And so this is just some things that have worked for me that I want to share with you guys. And you can go ahead and take it and run with it, or you can choose not to. And that's kind of the cool thing about this business. If you're like, man, I am not ready to do that, take this, I'll have it saved. You can come back to it later on, and maybe it is something that you're interested in doing down the road. So let me go ahead and share, because I have some images for you guys. And then, hold on one second. Okay, so I have been calling these, instead of sneak peeks, I would suggest that if you're going to do this, that you come up with a different name besides a sneak peek, because it's something that a lot of coaches have done. A lot of coaches have called it that. So just kind of think about what you would want to. And for me, I've been calling them my Instagram coach takeovers, because I know that I've seen a lot of people on Instagram will do, like they'll take over someone else's account. And so I kind of take this as like a day where I am just sharing things that are going on. So a couple of things that I am going to chat with you guys tonight about is why I decided to do that. And I shared a little bit of that before, how to run them. And this is how I've run them and how they've become effective for me. I'm sorry, you guys. What's wrong?
I hold you.
When to do them, or when has been most effective for me, and then some do's and don'ts of running these peaks. So one thing about why to do them, I did not expect my people that follow me to want me to just do this. But so what I suggest doing is that they don't want to like go somewhere else. So if like most of your traction is on Facebook, then you should be doing these on Facebook. If most of your traction is on Instagram, then you should be doing it on Instagram. I think of myself, like if I follow someone and they have something that I want to participate in, I don't want to go to a different platform. I want them to give me the information wherever it is that I'm following them. So that was one thing. You can record this. You can delete what you don't want to use. So if you are recording yourself talking, you can delete what you don't want, and you can redo it as many times as you want. So that's one advantage of doing it on your Instagram stories versus doing it in a live video or something like that. And you can add it to your highlights. So those little circles on your Instagram, those are called your highlights. And I have one that's just specifically coach information, and I can direct people to that because these stories go away after 24 hours. So they can go back to my highlights and watch them there. So if you, after this, want to say, well, what does this actually look like? You can go to my highlights at Meg Seals, and you can see what one looks like. It's not my most recent one, but it is one that I did. It forces you to be interactive and short and sweet and focused with your speaking. So you don't want to have like a million little dots of lines up at the top after your sneak peek. And so this really forces you to be like super focused and to include everybody into this discussion. So here's something that I did maybe a week, maybe 5 days before I was intending to do my Instagram takeover. What I did was I just asked this question and I did a little poll. And so I'm talking about the one over here. It says, doing an info sesh on what I do as a coach soon. How do you want to get the information? And then you'll see on the other side, I don't know if you can see that, maybe our little box is covering it up. But 24 people, so this is the only amount of people voted, but it said 24 people actually said that they would rather me do it on the stories versus do it somewhere else. Okay, sorry, had to mute someone real quick. So I thought that was kind of interesting that only 3 people said, yeah, I want to get this information in a Facebook group. Only 3 people wanted it in a PDF, which I don't even think I had a PDF created. I was just like, if you want me to do a PDF, I can create it if you need it. But I was pleasantly surprised that far majority of them wanted to just get the information on stories and decide from there. So here's a couple of things that I do beforehand to make sure that I'm prepared to do it so it runs smoothly and I don't have to like spend a ton of time creating things while I'm actually doing the peak. So the first thing you've got to do is to choose your 3 topics that you want to talk about. I don't think you need to do more than 3 topics. You can maybe like lead into something the day before. You can maybe do something the day after, but that day of the Instagram takeover needs to be like the meat and potatoes of what it means to be a coach. So for me, I like starting with emotion. I like starting with my story, how I got started or why I got started as a coach, and then what has changed since 4.5 years ago when I got started. Okay, so I like to start with the start and then what's changed. The second thing is what we do as a coach, because people want to see, can this fit into my life? Can I see myself doing what she does? And then the third thing is how we earn income, because I do feel like that is something that could be a deciding factor for someone who needs a little bit of extra income or would like a little bit of extra income. So those are the 3 topics. I'm going to give you later on some options for other topics if you're like, ooh, that's not really something. I do usually do some like common hesitations or fears that people have had before I start the peak. And then I'll talk about some things that I do afterwards also. Okay, so the second thing is you need to plan out what you're going to do. I have tried to just kind of willy-nilly do this, like, oh, I'm going to do one tonight. And so I start doing it, and it takes like much longer time than anticipated because you want it to be good and effective. So I always try to decide what I'm doing in video versus what I'm going to do in like a graphic that I just upload and put on my stories. For video, you want to really get down to simplifying as much as possible of what you're saying and take your story and condense it down to make it at least, for sure under 2 minutes speaking, possibly shorter than that even. For the graphics, you want to simplify the wording that you put on the graphic. You want it to be mostly picture and less of text. And create a visual effect. So you're going to create, if you're talking about community, you want a picture of you with other people. If you're talking about you working, you want an image of you working. So make sure that you create some kind of visual along with what you're talking about. Create the graphics ahead of time. Some things that I enjoy, a word swag is my like go-to ultimate favorite thing for adding text to graphics. Unfold is one that I use a lot that has like a pretty white background. It has image and then like black text. And then Canva is good. I've never really gotten into Canva much for Instagram stories, but that's one that a lot of people like. And then plan out when you're going to engage people, because if you're just like a talking head for like story after story after story, you're just talking, and you don't allow someone to interact with you, they're going to swipe through. So maybe that is a question box, you know, like if you're talking about fears like a question box of like, what would be your number one fear, or what is your number one fear of doing what I do? Maybe it is a poll or something like that that keeps people engaged and gets them to interact with you. Okay, and then the last thing to do to prepare is to invite. I actually do invite to my stories, which might seem crazy because it's not something that they like have to add themselves to or whatever it is, but it's simply just a like, hey, if I did this like little info session on my stories, would you come watch on Tuesday? And they can watch it at any time. If I do it at 10 a.m., they don't have to watch it until 10 p.m. because it's going to be live for those 24 hours. But just ask them, get that like, yeah, I'll come and check it, and then remind them of it also. So create a post and stories about the Instagram takeover. So publicly invite people by letting them know that you're going to be doing it, when you're going to do it. And that can be just a simple graphic that you put on your story of just like, hey, remember I have this going on Tuesday at noon, or whatever time you're doing it. Use polls, question box, or you can, like I said, actually like invite people through direct messenger. So I like to do a if I would you. So if I did this info sesh about what I do as a coach on my stories, would you catch it? Or would you mind watching it? Or something like that. I find that that's just a really quick little simple message that you can send to current challengers or people that you know are watching, or are people who have been interested in coaching beforehand. Okay, so those are some things to do to prepare for it. Now let's chat about some examples. So I talked about my 3 topics that I go over is my story, what we do as coaches, and then income. So I'm going to give you guys some examples of each of those and what they looked like in my last one. So for this one, I talked about, so I did like a mixture of like speaking, telling my story of why I got started, and then also like what's kind of changed from there. So you'll see how I have like a little poll in my story talking about why I got started, and then to get people interacted with it. And then I also included like a piece of like when my like business shifted when we were paying off debt, because that was a huge part of my story whenever I was coaching, of where we were and where we were headed and how coaching can really help people with their financial goals. So I said, so we made a plan, no new debt from the wedding because we were getting ready to pay for a wedding, pay off these student loans, match my teaching income. And then again, something that's interactive. Are you in a similar situation as we were? Okay, so keep in mind, and I'll talk about this again, but all of these things like a poll, anything like this type stuff, you can go back, you can see who interacted with them, and then you can follow up with people and say, hey, I saw that you watched my story. What did you think about it? Or I saw that you watched my Instagram coach takeover. What were your favorite parts of it? So it doesn't have to be a direct like, hey, I saw you watch that. Do you want to coach now? It can literally just be like, what did you think? What did you like? Those types of things, just to get the conversation rolling and starting. And if they say, oh, I don't know, I didn't really catch it, and then show them, hey, you can go watch it in my highlights then if you want to watch it again. Okay. So the next thing I talk about is what we do. This is the one part you've got to keep it as simple as possible, and keep it in such simple terms that a 10 to 12-year-old would understand what it is that we do. So I always go to these 4 things, and these you will see me say over and over again. But one is that we work on ourselves. This time I actually added how much time it would take to do that coach action. So I wanted people to see like, this is what we do, and this is the amount of time that it would take in your day to do that activity as a coach. So I chose to do all videos of these so I could explain just a little bit about this. I even included our business activity tracker so that they can see, oh, this is an easy checklist. They have resources for me to use also. Okay, so work on yourself, have purpose with social media, have genuine conversations, help others stay true to their goals in the Fit Tribe. And so I just wanted to hit on those basics of like, work on yourself, share that with others, help people see results. And it doesn't have to be super crazy, but I wanted to add in my own thoughts on, man, the whole social media part used to scare me. So I'm always trying to like add in those hesitations that I had, and then kind of how that's changed, what I think about that now. About how I was nervous about having conversations to begin with, but now I kind of see them as like genuine ways that I can build relationships with other women. Okay, and then the last thing, which I know is probably the one part that is maybe the scariest for people to talk about, is how we earn income. And once again, keeping it as simple as possible, I only break it into two different things. I talk about commission, how they can earn commissions. I always try to say, like, if you help 3, you'll earn this amount. Bonuses, I try to keep those kind of simple, and because I do feel like that is where it gets kind of confusing for people. But this middle graphic is something I'm going to use often, and that was just how we earn commissions by helping people with their health, and we earn bonuses by helping others do what we do. And that's probably, at least for me, the easiest way to break down how we earn income is like there's 2 different ways. And you can choose to just help people with their health, but you're not going to get to participate in the bonuses. Or you can choose to do both if you're willing to become a mentor to others also. Okay. And then once again, I try to make it interactive. So I had my August incomes from when I first started to now, you know, like, do you want to see this? And I kind of like create a little bit of curiosity of, hey, like, this is something I'm throwing out there. Keep in mind though, just talking about income, you do not have to be making much money to speak about income. I think about, I think it's Courtney Lubring would talk about how when she first started as a coach, she saw me talk about how I posted about I earned enough in that month to pay for the paint in my house. My house is small. It is not big at all. So it was not a very expensive expense. But I was so excited that I could use that extra income to pay for the paint in our house. This little guy is not going to sleep tonight.
Go the other way, buddy. Hey, can we go this way?
Okay.
No, hey.
So you might be thinking, that's cool. So when is the best time to do this? Honestly, with stories, people can watch them at any time. So the best time to do it is when it's most convenient for you. I've done them in the evening. I've done them in the morning, in the middle of the day. I haven't seen one that is better time than the others. I do feel like the day of the week is important. I don't think doing it on a Friday or Saturday is a good day. I would stay away from those. Even Monday may be a rough day just because I feel like people are just busy getting back to the swing of things on Mondays. So if I were thinking, I would say Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe Thursday are the best days to do these. But find what works for you and try out different things. I would reserve 1 hour of work time to do the sneak, just because you're going to need to do video. You might have to re-record certain videos if you don't like them, or you can spread it out into 3 sections. So maybe it's better for you to do like a little bit in the morning, a little bit at lunchtime, and a little bit in the evening or something like that. Like I said, do what's best for you. The best is that you try and that you do and you fail forward versus saying, well, I can't do it the way Meg does it, so I'm just not going to do it. Save it to highlights. You can reference those highlights if people missed it, or if someone's interested, they can go back and rewatch them. Okay, and then post after the peak, maybe the next day or right after it, create a call to action story. So include the name of your mentorship, how many spots are available, how many spots are left, how they can contact you. I do this with coaches, and then I also do it with challengers. So it's kind of, I do the same thing, you'll notice, with both things. One's just called My Fit Tribe, and one's called a mentorship. Okay, you can use engagements like I talked about earlier. While you were doing those stories, you should be getting people engaged. Use those to invite, to follow up to this. Okay. And then I talked earlier about how I got this idea from Melanie Mitro, and these are the graphics, so I wanted to put them in here. I'm not going to go through them, but basically it's just all these different topics that you can be doing. I told you my top 3 topics that I do, but these are things that you can do. You know, maybe you talk about what does it cost? How do we earn? What are some of the travel perks if you've gotten to go on the Success Club trip? You know, maybe your story is not a coaching story. Maybe it's more of a health, physical transformation story. So you can include that and talk about how coaching had an impact on your physical transformation. For me, that's not the case. So that wouldn't make sense for me to talk about. So those are all just different things. And I'm going to have this slides that you guys can go back and reference to. And then there's more topics that you can cover that she throws in there. And then even more ideas. I think it's, well, she even throws in like introducing Beachbody and its mission. So even talking about our company and how it got started. Okay, so that is what I have for you guys. If you have questions, I would happy to answer questions if you have any. Okay, Lisa, do you have one? I see you smiling like you got something.
I heard Zach whispering, actually, so I was just laughing at that.
It's chaos here tonight.
No, I liked all of that, though. I personally don't do this near enough, as we both know. So I'm just excited, and I like how all this is just laid out. It's super overwhelming. For those of you that are newer on the call, like I've been a coach for over 2 years, and it's still the idea of doing this just like gets me like, oh my gosh. But I can post about challenge groups and all that all day long, but this part is still something. So I just like it because it's literally no different than posting about a challenge group, just posting about a coaching group, you know, like, and I just have to get through that, you know, myself. So I'm excited to.
No, I love you being honest too, because I'll admit it was overwhelming because it's new and it's different. And anytime that you're doing something new and different, it can be like, oh, I've got to wrap my brain around this. And once I did it though, and I saw, oh, this worked and people are actually engaging in this. I did want to say also, if you're more of a Facebook kind of person, I have my Instagram stories and my Facebook stuff connected. And this last one I did, I got more conversation started through my Facebook one that I did on my Instagram stories. I don't know are they called stories on Facebook also? Those little circle things, I guess. So definitely use it in both places. I just have it connected. I don't even remember how I connected it, but I have both those accounts connected. And it was cool to see that it correlates over to Instagram and Facebook. And that people actually watch them on Facebook. That's cool to see. Okay, any other questions? I know Elena has done it. Are you at a time where you could chat about how yours went, what you would do differently or what you enjoyed about it?
Yeah, I just did my first one in last month, and it was very overwhelming. Me personally, I think I decided that instead, because I was like, well, I want to do it all at once, but for me to try to do it through the day, I was like, that's not going to happen. So it's like, I'll just have to do it after I get the girls to bed. Like I set a time, gave myself a deadline, but then I ended up staying up too late, and it was just too much late at the night when my brain is kind of like fried from kids for the day. So I think I decided, like you said, I want to try to break it up and like do it, and kind of that way I can kind of like show how I fit the business in throughout my pockets of the day, which is how most moms would have to do it, and that would be my niche market anyway. So being able to show a little bit like after my workout in the morning, a little bit like after school pickup in the middle of the day, a little bit like in the evening after I get the girls to bed at night. So yeah, that's kind of what I decided. I think I like some of these ideas. For me, it's always a challenge to keep things short and sweet. So I know it'll get there, but it went well. I just think I need to plan even more ahead of time. So
Yeah, I did find that the more I had planned, and then once you have it kind of planned, you can just tweak it and it goes better the next time. And you tweak it a little bit and it goes better the next time. So it's kind of like, just like the first time you ran a challenge group, it felt weird. It felt awkward. It's like, man, what am I doing? What am I even posting about? But once you did 1 and then 2, it just flowed. And it's like, oh, well, this is no big deal. Like, this is just a part of what I do now. So it's just like anything new. It just takes a little bit to get comfortable with it. Okay, so Kelly said, when or if you have women who want to try coaching, what would be your suggestion on where to start to not make it overwhelming for them? So what I have been doing that has been working is I have a coach checklist, and that really helps them to just get some of the basics of coaching. Because what I found was there were a lot of new coaches that were not getting some of the basics. And I can share that checklist with you. I've shared it in Spirit and Spunk Tribe before, but it goes over some basic things like what we do as coaches. So a repeat of the sneak peek, how to get started, some tips on social media, things like that. I'll show you what it looks like. And then from there, I always try to get them started on that like first post of like, let's get that out there. I feel like once they publish on that, like I'm a coach, then it's like, okay, I took the first step. I kicked off my business. Now let's move forward. And then I like to just try to schedule some kind of a one-on-one call where they can ask questions based on that checklist. So we have a guide and we can create a really simple, like, here's the 3 to 4 things I want you to do to see successful. And usually those things are things like, let's be consistent in our posting. So get consistent in your posting, work on yourself, start having conversations. So those are all like those basic things that, at least for me, I've seen success with, and it goes along with those checklists on the, I don't know where on the business activity tracker. I've had my new coaches highlight like the basic things that I want them to do, and that's been helpful. Okay, so do you strategically plan your Facebook takeover and new coach mentorship around when your Fit Tribe falls in the month? Yes, good question. I got a little off there with like launches and things like that, but first 2 weeks of the month, my goal is to hit Success Club. I always start challenge groups 3rd Monday of the month. So that gives me the first 2 weeks for sure to bring in challengers, get girls started on their fitness, those types of things. Once my challenge group starts, then I start promoting for my next Instagram takeover, and it's usually around the last week of the month. So it's kind of like first 2 weeks challenge. First 2 weeks challengers, last 2 weeks coaches, and then starts all over again. So that's kind of my strategy. I have a hard time like posting about both at the same time. So I just try to like health and fitness first 2 weeks, coaching last 2 weeks. And that seems to keep my mind. Yes, Melissa, I will share the new coach checklist in Spirit and Spunk Tribe, or we can tag if you can find it. I don't know if I'll be able to find it back. All right, any other questions? right. I wanted to shout out Hannah. Hannah is one of my brand new coaches, and I see her on here. So thanks for being on, Hannah. We haven't even gotten to do like a one-on-one chat yet, and she hopped on the team call. So I love that. That's pretty cool to see. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, I will have this recording up if anybody else needs to see it. And thank you guys for being on tonight. So try it out. If you have any other questions about this, definitely let me know. I'd love to help you with yours. Okay? All right. See you guys.